Hey, good day. My name is Dr. Phillip Akinsoto. I work in two of our local hospitals, and this is Medical Moments. I am here to talk about this COVID 19 pandemic, which has saturated the news airwaves. And essentially, COVID 19 essentially means coronavirus disease 2019. They had to give it a time and a name. Essentially, I like to go back to the basics. I'd like to thank James Dorsey for such a very succinct and clear presentation 2 days ago. So I'd like to go back to the basics I stated. What is it? I'd like to talk what's a virus, because everybody's using the term virus. We have to understand what this organism does and how it goes about its destruction. A virus essentially is a very peculiar organism. There's a lot of debate whether it's a living or non-living organism. But the most important thing about this organism is that it requires a living cell to achieve its only goal. And its only goal is to make copies of itself. Nothing more. Once it gains access to the cell it needs, it makes multiple uses the cell's own resources, diverts it from the cell taking care of itself, and now changes those resources for the viral production. So what ends up happening is that the virus produces tens, hundreds, even thousands of viruses in that cell, which wear out the cell, kill the cell, and then these viruses spread to other neighboring cells to do the same thing. And the cycle repeats itself. One thing I would like to say, though, is that the issue of the COVID-19 is still in its early phases. Nobody in the medical world has a handle on it, in the sense that we're still learning about this virus. However, we have some history to guide us and some current observations to guide us how to manage this condition. Now, the question people like to ask is, what is a coronavirus? Well, the question should be, what are coronaviruses? Because it's a family of viruses. Coronaviruses are very common in many animals, most especially the bats. And we have four major groups or subfamilies of the coronavirus: alpha, beta, gamma, delta. Only the alpha and the beta class families of coronaviruses are seen in the human population. The alpha, you might have the one that causes common cold, but the beta is the one that's more ominous. And that's where we've had 3 pandemics occur from that group. The first one, if some of you remember, was in 2002 with the SARS virus. It was like all these 3 viruses have in common from the beta family is that the primary reservoir has always been the bat. So in 2002, it mutated and skipped from the bat to an animal called the civet cat, and from there to human beings. And from human beings, it started spreading. Fortunately, this pandemic died off on its own. As soon as it came, it went. And nobody really knows why it we weren't doing so much social distancing, but it sort of fizzled out. It was a more prolific killer of people than what we have now. The SARS means severe acute respiratory distress syndrome virus. And then MERS means Middle Eastern Respiratory Distress Virus. That one occurred in 2012. The virus, same process, bat to camel, camel to man. Now what people are calling coronavirus is actually, I'll call SARS 2.0. That's what it is. It's very identical to the original one in 2002. It's the Severe Acute Respiratory Distress Syndrome Virus 2. That's what it is. Its true medical name is. It's same thing, bat, but this time it went to a very peculiar animal called the pangolin. That's what everybody believes. And in China, this pangolin is an animal that looks like a cross between an armadillo and an anteater. It has scales on its back, and it's believed that these scales may hold, which I don't really believe, some medicinal benefits. So it's an animal that's highly prized. It was believed this animal was in some animal market in Wuhan, and it must have mutated and then skipped to a human being there, and that's when the disease spread initially in Wuhan, in the Hubei province of China. Now, I thought Wuhan was some small little town. When I looked closely, this is a town that has direct flights to many big cities. It has direct flights to Rome, to New York, to San Francisco, to London. So it's not, we're not talking about a small little town like, no disrespect, Huntsville, but that's what it is. So that's how we believe the disease spread. Now, the coronavirus gets its name because the name corona means crown, and it's because of the protein. That's the protein sticking out the envelope of the virus that gives it that crown-like appearance. It's not as, when you look at it under the microscope, it doesn't really appear that way, but to the people who are virologists, they get excited and think it looks like a crown. The other issue here is how it causes its damage. Now, you have to think about, as I stated earlier, a virus needs a living cell to gain access to make copies of itself and subsequently destroy the cell and move on to other cells. Now, that's one of the reasons why they tell people to wash their hands, is because inadvertently, people will touch their eyes, their nose, their mouth. That's where it gains access. They call it the T-zone. That's where that's where the virus gains access. Because left on your own hands, the virus can do nothing, because our skin cells, the top layer, is dead. The virus cannot do anything. It dies off. The skin cells will have a fantastic protection there. So it gains access through our nasal passages, our eyes, or our lips. And once it gets to those cells, these are living cells that have nourishment get oxygen and good blood supply. It gains access and then multiplies, makes copies of itself, and moves on to the next cell. So it works its way to your throat, and from your throat to your windpipe, and from your windpipe to your lung. And that's where it does its most devastating damage. It gains access to the cells that line the parts of your lung that are responsible for oxygen exchange. And when it does that damage, if you don't have a good, strong immune system, like a lot of kids have, or younger people, or if you have a chronic illness, or you're very old, then this virus will do a lot of damage to you. It will destroy those cells. You won't be able to transport oxygen from outside into your bloodstream. And when your other vital organs don't get this oxygen, then it can cause problems. It can start to fail, and that may eventually lead to death in very small cases. The next thing I want to talk about is, how do we test it? Well, the main way we test for this is the best is to do a nasal swab and a throat swab simultaneously and send it to the lab. What you're looking for is the telltale fingerprints of this virus, the RNA, and that's how we test for it. Now, the problem we're facing here is that we don't have enough test kits, and I think that's what's led to some of the panic in the medical community. It's not because we can't manage these conditions, really, because we do have the end lung damage from this virus. We see on a day-to-day basis the lung destruction and all that stuff that this virus does. We've managed this. We see this regularly in many hospitals in this country. It's a law of demand and supply. When the demand for the healthcare exceeds the supply, we get worried. And it's not like, pneumonias that come, there's a little trickle and you can manage it, but it's because of that. It's outstripped our supply of nurses, doctors, even equipment. That's the thing. And because this virus is a relative of the common cold, and we know how the common cold spreads so rapidly, it's very efficient at spreading very rapidly. But the only difference is that, unlike the common cold, it can cause death in some cases or severe illness. So that's where everybody is scared. So that's why we in addition to doing the swab, some people have resorted, well, we can't get the kits, we're going to use CAT scans and x-rays. And I totally disagree with that, and a lot of experts do, because the CAT scans and chest x-rays are not specific. Any viral pneumonia will give you that picture. Even some bacterial pneumonias will give you that picture. So you don't know what you're really looking at. And it only causes more anxiety in the patients than any good at all. So that's, and the risk groups that we have, as alluded to, people are age greater than 60, people who have weak immune systems like diabetics, people with HIV, cancer patients on chemo, people who have who are organ donor recipients, people who have cardiovascular problems, or any organ that is weak, like lungs, liver, kidney. Those are people that at risk, or anybody who's been exposed, even though they're healthy, to someone who has an active disease, or who came from where there's a hotspot like Wuhan, Italy, Western Europe, New York, or LA in our case here. So those are the people that need to be screened, need to be, what we do, we just isolate them, observe them for a few days, and see they'll have their symptoms progress before we release them. The other thing I want to just touch on before is that when someone tests positive, it doesn't, everybody, I think the media, I hate to say this, the media, we have to remember the media's business model is fear. They have to get people whipped up in hysteria because they have to sell ads. And it's the truth. People don't want to hear it, but that is the truth. If they can't make you come back to watch their news updates, then they're not going to make as much money as they want to. So they have to really amp things up. I always tell people to look at their own personal reality. And I'm going to just talk about, I don't know what's going on in New York. I just see some occasional data every day again, but let's talk about Huntsville. I work in 2 different county hospitals. I work in Limestone, I work in Morgan County. And I think 2 weeks ago, I think that's when we had 1 case. And the woman, we didn't even admit her. We just sent her home because she was healthy. She had no medical problems. And to the best of our knowledge, she stayed way past day 14. We haven't, usually by that time they were going to do bad, they should have been in the hospital. So I believe she's doing very well. And all the people that were exposed to her, we've tested them, they'll be negative. That's 1 county. The other county, we've had a lot of false negative, false positive, well not positive, but a lot of people that we thought were going to test positive, at least 4 or 5 cases. None of them tested positive. There may be 1 there, I'm not sure, it hasn't been confirmed, but I can tell you for a fact that we haven't had so many cases. Like the media, at least I'm going to speak for only where I work and where I am, that the media will make one believe. And to back my point, I mean, you have to look at the statistics in Alabama as a whole. We just have over 200 cases, just over 200. And we have to remember this, that being positive does not mean that you're gonna die or you're gonna be admitted to the hospital. No, it's a spectrum. You have people who test positive who have no symptoms. You have people who have mild symptoms. You have people who test positive who have serious symptoms, but they don't need to be on a life support machine. We have a very small group of people who end up on the life support machine. Those are more the exception than the rule. 80-85% of people will have the infection and have mild symptoms or no symptoms. So we have to look at things in context. And here we have just over 200 cases in the state of Alabama as of now, and our population is 4.8 million. I like to always challenge people. That's why I ask them these questions. How many people who are watching this know someone personally that has COVID-19 and has died? That's one question I'd like to ask yourself. For those who like to binge on news, for the last 3 days, watching news day in and out, have you changed any of your day-to-day life activities? I mean, other than all the instructions that the CDC has given us or the Alabama Department of Health, like the hand washing, the hygiene things, and distancing. Have you done anything else? The question why I ask that question is going back to watch this thing over and over again, and after knowing what all the information you need to know, it doesn't serve you any purpose. All it does is increase your anxiety. With anxiety, you get a lot of stress, and with stress, you release cortisol. Even weakens your immune system theoretically. So I don't know why people will do this to themselves. I'm not saying people should be ignorant. I just say if you want to get any information, I strongly recommend you go to CDC, go to the Alabama Department of Health, because they're not there to sensationalize or get whip you up in hysteria. They give you the cold facts. So the media has their own agenda, which is it's a business. They have to make money. So that's my own take on it. And as Christians, in your time of crisis, what has the Bible promised us? So we always have to go back to, what you believe in, and not let our emotions supersede our thinking. I mean, well, 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7 says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love, and most importantly, of sound mind." When you keep watching these things, you're going to start losing your mind. And that's not of God. And Christ has said in Matthew 6:34 that don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own worries. Tomorrow's troubles are enough for today. And even He has assured us that, yes, we will have trials in this world, we have all these upheavals, but He has overcome them. So we have to always go back to our basics.